Welcome back. Get comfortable, dim the lights, and let your mind drift. Tonight we're going through a long, slow collection of true, strange, and calming facts, one after another, no rush at all. If you fall asleep before the end, that's exactly what this is for. And Frank's older sister Margot also kept a diary while the family hid from the Nazis, and once asked if she could read it. Margot's diary was never found after the war and is considered lost for good. Let's stay on this a little longer. In Japanese, the word komaribi describes the particular dappled light that filters down through the leaves of trees, a thing many other languages have no single word for. One more like that. In the ancient city of Rome, an hour of daylight in summer was longer than an hour of daylight in winter, because they simply divided whatever daylight there was into 12 equal parts. Moving along, archaeologists have found sealed jars of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are more than 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible, preserved by honey's natural low moisture and acidity. Here's another one. The ancient Stoics taught that we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond, and that this small space between event and reaction is where a calm life is built. Here's something else worth knowing. Socrates wrote nothing down. Everything we know of his ideas comes from his students, who remembered his habit of answering a question with another question until the truth revealed itself. One more like that. While filming Conan the Barbarian in Spain in 1981, James Earl Jones and a young Arnold Schwarzenegger worked out a quiet trade between takes. Jones coached him through his line readings while Schwarzenegger helped keep him in shape. Schwarzenegger later credited that easy mentorship as part of what taught him the actual craft of acting. Speaking of that, the city of Damascus has been lived in continuously for thousands of years, meaning someone has woken there, made a meal, and gone back to sleep every day for longer than most nations have existed. One more like that. Vikings did not wear horned helmets in battle. That image came from 19th century opera costumes and stuck in popular imagination ever since. Here's something else worth knowing. For much of history, blue was one of the rarest and most expensive colors an artist could use, because it had to be ground from a semi-precious stone carried thousands of miles. On a similar note, the word muscle comes from a Latin word for little mouse, because someone long ago thought a flexing muscle looked like a small mouse moving under the skin. Here's a strange one. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus said you can never step into the same river twice, because both the river and the person stepping into it are always quietly changing. Speaking of that, Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire, wrote private notes to himself each night reminding himself to be patient and kind, never meaning for anyone else to read them. On a similar note, some languages describe direction not as left and right but as north, south, east, and west, so their speakers keep an effortless inner compass at all times, even in the dark. Moving along, Mississippi is the only state in the country with no law that expressly bans an open container of alcohol inside a moving car. Every other state closed that particular gap in its highway code decades ago, leaving Mississippi as a quiet holdout on an old rule almost nobody remembers being written. Moving along, in 1930, an 11-year-old girl named Venetia Burney suggested the name Pluto for a newly discovered planet after her grandfather read her the news over breakfast. She lived to see Pluto reclassified as a dwarf planet in 2006, 3 years before she died at 90. Here's another one. Robert Pattinson gave director Christopher Nolan a book of Oppenheimer's speeches from the 1950s as a wrap gift after they finished filming Tenet together. Nolan later said reading it was what first hooked him on the story, and it eventually led him to make the film Oppenheimer. Here's a strange one. The oldest known written joke is thousands of years old, from ancient Sumer, and like many jokes since, it is about how children never quite do as they are told. Here's a change of pace. The thinker Lao Tzu described the ideal way of moving through life as being like water, soft and yielding, yet able over time to wear away the hardest stone. On a similar note, the United States tried keeping daylight saving time in place all year round on 2 separate occasions, once during the Second World War to save energy and again in the 1970s during an energy crisis, and both times so many people missed the earlier winter sunrise that the country quietly switched back. Something else, now. A young Lionel Messi was diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency at age 10, and the treatment his family needed cost more than his father's insurance could keep covering. A boyhood spent waiting on injections and slow growth charts turned into one of the most decorated careers in the sport's history. Speaking of that, the oldest known melody that can still be played was written down more than 3,000 years ago, in the ancient kingdom of Ugarit, on a tablet of clay. Here's something else worth knowing. The Japanese idea of wabi-sabi finds beauty in things that are imperfect, weathered, and impermanent, like a cracked bowl mended with gold so the repair becomes part of its story. Let's stay on this a little longer. By 1797, the young United States was spending close to 1/5 of its entire federal budget paying tribute to the Barbary states of North Africa, just to keep American ships from being seized. The expense became so unsustainable that it helped push Congress toward building a proper navy instead. Speaking of that, almost every language on Earth puts the subject of a sentence before the object, but a tiny handful flip that order, and so does the fictional Jedi Master Yoda. Linguists have found that this object-first pattern occurs naturally in well under 1% of the world's languages, part of why Yoda's slow, backward phrasing has always sounded so calm and unusual. Let's stay on this a little longer. In February 2018, a single Telugu character sent by text message was found to crash iPhones and other iOS devices the moment it appeared on screen. Apple traced the bug to how the character combined several smaller symbols and fixed it in the next software update. Moving along, the Great Wall of China was not built as a single continuous project. It was constructed, extended, and repaired by many different dynasties over roughly 2,000 years. Here's a strange one. In March 2001, the pilot flying Rowan Atkinson's small plane over Kenya fainted at the controls, and Atkinson kept the aircraft steady in the air until the pilot came back around. Once the pilot recovered, he brought them down safely at Wilson Airport in Nairobi, and the flight simply ended the ordinary way flights are supposed to. Let's stay on this a little longer. In August 2011, a film literally titled The Worst Movie Ever opened at a single theater in Los Angeles and sold exactly one paid ticket across its whole opening weekend, earning $11 total. It remains the lowest opening weekend gross ever recorded for a film released in theaters. Speaking of that, the city of Rome was not the largest city in the ancient world. At its peak, ancient Rome had around 1 million residents, but so did several cities in ancient China. Moving along, Cleopatra lived closer in time to the invention of the smartphone than to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, since more than 2,000 years already separated her from the pyramid's builders. On a similar note, in September 1695, the English pirate Henry Every and his small squadron caught the Mughal treasure ship Ganjai Sawai in the Arabian Sea, seizing gold, silver, and jewels that later estimates placed as high as £600,000. It was called the richest prize any pirate crew ever took, and Every himself was never caught. Something else, now. Oxford University in England is older than the Aztec Empire. Teaching had already been happening at Oxford for more than a century before the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan was founded. Something else, now. Shirley Temple's film career as a child star earned millions of dollars through the 1930s, but by the time she retired from acting around age 22 in 1950, she found that most of that fortune was already gone, spent and managed away by the adults who had been trusted to look after it. Here's a strange one. The philosopher Epicurus believed the goal of life was not wild pleasure but a quiet, untroubled mind, best found among friends, simple meals, and a garden. Let's stay on this a little longer. The Great Wall of China was built and rebuilt over nearly 2,000 years by many different dynasties, so it is less a single wall than a long conversation across centuries. Speaking of that, in German, there is a single tidy word, Feierabend, for the warm, settled feeling of the workday being over and the evening being entirely your own. One more like that. In August 1990, a fossil hunter named Sue Hendrickson wandered off to explore a rocky outcrop in South Dakota while the rest of her team drove into town to fix a flat tire. She spotted bones jutting from the cliff face that turned out to belong to one of the most complete Tyrannosaurus rex skeletons ever found, now known simply as Sue. Here's another one. The word philosophy simply means love of wisdom, and for the ancient Greeks it was less a subject to study than a way of living carefully and paying attention. On a similar note, during a heated 1966 World Cup match, Argentina's captain was sent off and refused to leave the field for several minutes, since referees at the time could only tell a player they were dismissed by speaking to them. The standoff convinced a top FIFA referee to borrow an idea from ordinary traffic lights, and within a year soccer had its first yellow and red cards. Here's a change of pace. In 2008, Rwanda became one of the first countries in the world to ban plastic bags outright, with real penalties for anyone caught using one. Kigali, the capital, is now often called the cleanest city in Africa, helped along by a monthly nationwide cleanup morning called Umuganda that many Rwandans still take part in. Speaking of that, when the movie Tron came out in 1982, the Academy Awards actually left it out of the running for the Visual Effects Prize, because using computers to help build the effects struck some judges as too close to cheating to count as real filmmaking craft. Here's a strange one. Medieval people often slept in 2 shifts, waking in the quiet middle of the night for an hour or so of calm wakefulness before drifting back to a second sleep. One more like that. The shortest recorded war in history lasted about 38 minutes, when British forces bombarded a royal palace in Zanzibar in 1896 until the ruling sultan surrendered. That's all for tonight. Wherever you are in your night by now, rest well. We'll be back with more next time.